welcome to Edison TV. In today's edition, we're going to be highlighting the work of SIGA Technologies. It's a pharmaceutical company with a very particular business, producing products that we hope will never be used. And it's actually medical countermeasures against chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. We've previously interviewed CEO Phil Gomez, but I'm thrilled to have with us here today its Chief Scientific Officer, Dennis Hruby. Dennis, hello.
Hello, it's nice to be here.
First of all, I want to congratulate you because you've recently been awarded a very, very prestigious award by the American Society of Microbiology. So tell us a bit more about that. You're allowed to brag. It's allowed.
Well, thank you.
It's a very prestigious award.
It was an award for career achievement in applied biotechnology. And for me, that was very gratifying because during my scientific career, I've always sought to translate the results of my work into something that will be meaningful in human health, be it a vaccine, a diagnostic, or more recently, an antiviral. So to be recognized for these efforts, I found very, very rewarding.
Now, your lead program at SIGA is, I know this sounds extraordinary, but it's for something, a disease that no longer exists, TPOXX. Tell us a bit more about TPOXX program.
Right now, our drug is approved for therapeutic use against smallpox, so people who have a demonstrable case. It is not approved against cowpox, vaccinia, or monkeypox, but we're working to change that. TPOXX was conceived to develop an antiviral against smallpox. As you may know, smallpox is probably the most deadly disease ever to be on the earth. And it is, although it's been eradicated, it's considered to be the #1 biothreat agent. People are no longer vaccinated, and were it to be distributed either intentionally or by accident, the results would be a worldwide catastrophe. And although we do have vaccines, they have side effects, so they're not routinely deployed. So it was important to have in our arsenal a drug that could be used in people that had been exposed or were already infected to prevent morbidity and mortality, and we've done that. But I do want to clarify the fact that this drug is actually used. It is certainly stockpiled to be used against smallpox, and we hope that never happens. But there are other pox viruses, cowpox, vaccinia infections, and monkeypox, that the drug is actually used to treat. So it is making some people's lives better.
So tell me about monkeypox, because this is a disease that's certainly not well known, but there are sporadic outbreaks.
Yes, and they're getting more frequent. Monkeypox is a very close relative to smallpox at the genetic level, as well as the disease it causes. When it gets into a human, there's a prolonged incubation period of about 10 to 12 days. The individual begins to feel fatigue, aches and pains, fever, and then breaks out with a rash that looks very, very similar to smallpox. Starts in the hands and feet and spread elsewhere. And sometimes you'll get thousands of lesions on a single individual. Generally, they recover, although the death rate is up to 10%, depending on the strain of monkeypox. As I mentioned, it's becoming more common. Since the eradication of smallpox, we no longer vaccinate. So we have a whole generation of people that are naive to pox viruses. And the cases are going up this year in Central Africa, or I should say Democratic Republic of Congo. There have been 8,000 cases already. It's been exported into the UK, as you know, Singapore, Israel, and the United States. So this is a real problem. The other issue is, might it become worse? As we've seen with COVID and the mutation to the Delta and Mu variants, things can go from bad to worse. Same as monkeypox. Right now, it's not very good at transmitting from person to person. It's primarily from contact with infected animals. But how many mutations will it take for it to learn how to go from person to person and cause more serious disease? We don't know, but we certainly know that's possible, and that's why it's important to have a drug like TPOXX around to treat infections if they ever get in that situation.
Now, when you say infected animals, of course, we immediately think that it must be monkeys, but actually there are a number of intermediate hosts which are much more likely to be food animals.
That's correct. In fact, monkeys are very rare hosts. It's typically rodents in Africa where it's endemic. Dormice, pouch rats, rope squirrels are common. So typically people come in contact when they're in the forest foraging and coming up with things to eat, and they come in contact with these animals. It can be transmitted person to person, usually by direct contact of a caregiver taking care of a patient, or it can go through the respiratory route. And there have been cases where up to 5 generations of individuals have been infected with monkeypox.
And is it as disfiguring a disease as smallpox is?
It is. Basically, should you survive, everywhere where you have a pox, you're going to have a scar. So, and, you know, that's a horrible consequence.
So these animals are encountered in the bush, but actually what we're seeing as well is an increasing trade in animals that potentially carry monkeypox right across the world.
That's true. I mean, it's the same thing with the wet markets in China, coming in contact with these animals that harbor unknown pathogens such as monkeypox. That's just a recipe for disaster.
And how does TPOXX work in addressing it? I mean, is it something that you give once somebody's contracted it? Do you give it to people who are potentially exposed?
The drug is very effective against all these orthopoxviruses, which is what the family is called, both in the laboratory and in animals. In fact, the bulk of our regulatory work has been done using monkeypox in non-human primates. So we're very, very confident it will work. And we've had the occasion to use it on several human beings, so we know it works. We're working on approvals. We have a broader indication against all these viruses in our regulatory application under consideration at the EMA and at Health Canada. And we're working with the FDA to have it added into our American FDA approval as well. So we think it's important to have an approved drug so it's easy to ship around and get into countries when it's needed.
And do you think COVID-19 has really sharpened people up in terms of thinking about where the next pandemic might be coming from and having the necessary weapons, as it were, in your armamentarium in advance?
I would say yes, and I would say no. And the yes is right now, everybody's very aware of the effect of a virus like COVID coming into our population, both in terms of morbidity as well as the economic consequences. And there's a lot of momentum to develop countermeasures for the next virus. However, having said that, people and governments' memories are somewhat short. And should we go a few years without another problem, priorities may shift. I mean, we've had other pandemics before and had a lot of concern expressed, and then that kind of waned. So I'm hoping this time we've learned a lesson and we really apply it to have vaccines and drugs on the shelf should we need them.
So what's in the SIGA's pipeline for both monkeypox and other orthopoxviruses? What can we expect from you in the coming months?
Well, certainly for TPOXX, we're working on getting additional indications, which I mentioned, as well as getting it approved for post-exposure prophylaxis. That's really the most important use. If you start treating people who've just been exposed and not having frank disease, you really tamp down an epidemic quickly. We also have a second smallpox antiviral that works by a completely independent mechanism of action that we're bringing forward so we have more than one. And beyond that, we continue to look at other biodefense programs and see where we can apply our expertise.
And I know that you've made a big sale of TPOXX to the US government, but what about other governments across the world?
Well, we've reported a sale to Canada. We have another foreign sale that we're currently negotiating. We believe, and we've had a lot of interest, certainly from European countries. We believe once we get a European approval, that will move things forward there because they don't have the same sort of mechanisms to purchase unapproved drugs as the US does. So we think that European approval will be very important.
And there will be stockpiles of this, obviously, because that's very important. But what about the manufacturing lead time? Were there to be an outbreak of something? What's that?
Even in the best of cases, it's probably close to a year. So it's important that the drug is stockpiled in its final form and perhaps some of the intermediates. Hopefully by the time this would ever happen, we'll have the supply chain problems solved too, because obviously that would slow things down.
It's been a fascinating conversation with you, Dr. Hruby. I've really enjoyed it. And I just finally, what's your take on COVID? I mean, you've spent all of your career in this area of infection. What has your take been on COVID?
Well, I think we have to learn from the science. I mean, coronaviruses is a common cold and been around forever, and we never get immune to them. So we're lucky in the case of COVID-19 to come up with a vaccine. The emerging data is relatively short-lived. Boosters are probably going to be required. So I suspect COVID is going to be around as an endemic virus for our lifetimes. I hope we'll come up with some medications or drugs that can be used to treat the actual infections that we get. And if we're all vaccinated, the infections will be less serious. So I think we'll learn to live with it, but it's not going to go away.
That's very interesting. And of course, it actually, all of this has shown us just how important it is to prepare for the future. And I'm very grateful to you for coming on Edison TV today to talk to us about monkeypox and about TPOXX. Thank you so much, Dr. Hruby.
Thank you for having me.